In 1895, during routine foundation repairs to San Francisco City Hall, workers excavating beneath the structure discovered something that should not have existed. 8 feet below the basement level below, what city engineers understood to be the deepest human construction in that location, they found another basement. This second basement was older, significantly older. The walls were constructed from a type of sandstone quarried nowhere near San Francisco. The mortar binding the stones together contained trace elements of materials not indigenous to Northern California. Most disturbing, this hidden room sat precisely 43 feet below street level at a depth that would have required knowledge of water tables, soil composition, and structural engineering principles that official Spanish colonial records make no mention of possessing in 1776, when San Francisco was supposedly first settled. The discovery took 3 days to document. By the 4th day, the work orders disappeared. By the 5th day, the room was sealed. For 129 years, that basement remained untouched, until 1975, when a structural engineer named Robert Hartley uncovered the original documentation. He spent the last year of his life trying to answer a single question: who built that room, and why did everyone who discovered it afterward decide it never existed? The work orders from 1895 are preserved in the San Francisco Municipal Archives. Most people have never seen them, because access requires written authorization from 3 separate city departments, a requirement that does not exist for any other construction record from that era. The first order, dated March 14, 1895, describes routine foundation work. The second order, dated March 17, 1895, uses a single word that changes everything: unexpected. The full text reads, "Excavation has reached unexpected depth. Masonry of unknown origin encountered. Structural analysis required before proceeding. All personnel sworn to discretion per Mayor's Office directive." The document is signed by James Malloy, the Chief Structural Engineer. 3 weeks later, Malloy submitted his final report. That report is not in the archives. According to the log sheets maintained by every city clerk since 1895, it was removed for institutional review on April 12, 1895, by someone identified only as CF. No surname is recorded. No position is listed. No explanation is given for its removal. What we do know comes from secondary sources. In a letter dated April 18, 1895, to a colleague in Sacramento, Malloy wrote, "The discovery presents certain complications that require discretion. The depth alone suggests origin predating any accepted historical chronology for this region. The stone composition does not match geological survey data for California. I have been asked to restrict my observations. I am complying." 3 sentences. Malloy never wrote about the basement again. He continued his career as a respected engineer, worked on 5 other major San Francisco construction projects, and died in 1923, without ever publicly discussing what lay 8 feet beneath City Hall. His personal journals, donated to Berkeley after his death, contain exactly 1 reference to the discovery. The entry is dated May 3, 1895. It reads, "Cannot sleep." The implications are unacceptable. Professionally, I must forget I saw it. That is the entire entry. But Malloy was not the only person who documented his discovery. Joseph Chen, the primary excavation foreman, kept a personal log of daily work. Unlike Malloy's restricted professional documents, Chen's log was private, a simple leather journal never intended for official review. It survived because it was found in Chen's personal effects after his death in 1934, purchased by a San Francisco antiques dealer who did not understand its historical significance. The journal was passed through 3 private collections over the next 4 decades until Robert Hartley, the structural engineer who would become obsessed with the mystery, acquired it in 1971. In Chen's own hand, written in Cantonese with annotations in broken English, is the only detailed contemporary account of what the hidden basement actually contained. Chen's entry from March 17, 1895, reads, "Today we break through to lower chamber. Room is perfect square, 20 feet by 20 feet. Walls are fitted stone, no clay joints. Very old construction. The stone is smooth, deliberate, not natural. On the north wall is symbol carved in stone. Symbol repeats 4 times, evenly spaced, each symbol the size of a man's hand. Nobody recognizes symbol. Molloy tells us to photograph nothing. He studies the symbol for 2 hours without speaking. He measures everything. He writes very fast. Then he tells us it must be sealed immediately. We are told to sign documents and not speak about what we saw." Chen drew the symbol in the margin of the journal. The drawing is crude but precise, a vertical line with 4 horizontal intersections, each line protruding equally to both sides. Beneath the symbol, Chen wrote a single word in English, unknown. That drawing exists in the Robert Hartley collection at the San Francisco History Center. Researchers have been examining it since the collection was donated in 1989, the year Hartley died. Art historians, archaeologists and historians have compared Chen's drawing to every documented indigenous symbol from the Pacific coast. Nothing matches. The symbol appears in no Ohlone records, no Spanish colonial documentation, no archaeological database. It simply does not belong to any known culture's visual language from Northern California. What makes the mystery more complex is a single fact that emerged from the 1895 work orders themselves. The basement they were working on, the one that supposedly predated Spanish settlement, was not built in isolation. The mortar samples that were collected by Molloy and sent to Berkeley for analysis in April 1895 were discovered in the university archives by a geology graduate student named Patricia Herrera in 1998. She was searching for something entirely different when she found them. Sealed in a metal box labelled only with a date, 4/12/1895. The analysis, conducted by Berkeley's chemistry department in 1895, concluded that the mortar sample contained trace elements of volcanic ash from Mount Saint Helens, which last erupted in 1480. This detail appeared in no official report. It was appended to the back of a scientific memo that was then filed in a restricted section of the archives. The implication was clear to anyone reading it carefully. The mortar in that hidden basement was potentially 400 years old. 400 years before 1895 was 1495. In 1495, San Francisco was inhabited solely by Ohlone people. The Spanish had not yet arrived. The Spanish did not reach Northern California until 1769, when Gaspar de Porto established the first European settlements. If the basement walls predated Spanish arrival, they predated any European construction in the region. But the stone composition, the mortar analysis, and the construction techniques, none of it matched Ohlone archaeological records. The Ohlone were not stone builders. They did not construct underground chambers. They did not use mortar binding. The archaeological record from the Bay Area shows no evidence of underground stone construction by any indigenous group prior to European arrival. Yet the room existed. The room was documented. The room was sealed. And everyone involved in its discovery was either silenced or chose silence. The suppression of information about the basement became systematic after the initial discovery in 1895. When Robert Hartley began investigating in the 1970s, he found that every major repository of historical information had been deliberately compartmentalized. City archives contained the work orders but not Molloy's full report. Berkeley contained the mortar analysis but not the geological implications. The photographs that Molloy was ordered not to take seem to have been taken anyway, his personal effects, included negative plates of the basement's interior, discovered among his papers after his death. These photographs were not preserved. They were destroyed. How we know they existed comes from a single source, a letter from Molloy's wife to a family friend, written in 1924, 1 year after Molloy's death. She writes, "I have done as James requested. The plates are gone. I cannot say more. But I want you to know that he never recovered from what he saw. He said it changed what he understood about this place entirely." Hartley's investigation revealed that the decision to suppress information came directly from the mayor's office in 1895. Mayor Adolph Sutro, a prominent businessman and engineer, had overseen the City Hall expansion project. The moment news of the hidden basement reached him, Sutro convened a private meeting with the city's architectural committee. No minutes of this meeting were recorded. But Sutro's private correspondence, discovered in archives decades later, contains a single reference. On April 8, 1895, Sutro wrote to an unnamed recipient, "The discovery is untenable for the city's narrative. Our history as established provides no accommodation for the implications. Therefore, the discovery will be catalogued as a geological anomaly, an unusual formation without human agency. The matter closes. That language is deliberate. A geological anomaly without human agency, in other words, not a building at all. Just a natural cavity that happened to contain perfectly fitted stone walls and carved symbols." The official explanation that emerged in 1895 and persists to this day is that the basement was actually a natural sandstone formation that miners had partially worked in the 1880s before abandoning the project. The fitted stone walls were supposedly cave formations. The carved symbols were supposedly natural patterns created by water erosion. The mortar was supposedly a later addition, possibly from the 1880s mining operations, which would explain the volcanic ash. Every element of the discovery was reframed as geology, not archaeology. As accident, not intention. As natural process, not human construction. The problem with this explanation is that it contradicts the 1895 work orders themselves. The orders specifically note that the excavation was performed by trained stoneworkers using surveying equipment, not miners working naturally occurring deposits. Chen's log confirms that the stone fitting was deliberate and precise, not naturally formed. Molloy's measurements indicated geometric perfection, perfect right angles, perfect dimensions, not the irregular formations that water erosion would produce. The official explanation required believing that trained engineers and stoneworkers had all misidentified what they were looking at, or had deliberately lied about what they found. It required believing that the carved symbols which Chen drew carefully, and which no one has ever matched to natural geological processes formed through random erosion. It required believing that 400-year-old mortar containing volcanic ash from a specific eruption appeared beneath a major city by pure coincidence. Yet the official explanation worked. It was never seriously challenged in any formal historical venue during the entire 20th century. The basement beneath San Francisco City Hall became invisible. Libraries did not mention it. Schools did not teach it. Historians did not investigate it. The institutional silence was so complete that most people living in San Francisco had no idea the discovery had ever occurred. The information was not destroyed, it was compartmentalized, filed away in archives with restricted access, framed in language that made it sound geological rather than historical, and then simply left to be forgotten. What remains today is fragmented but significant. The mortar analysis from Berkeley is still preserved, still available to researchers who know where to look. Chen's journal exists in the History Center. The negative plates from Molloy's photographs, while the images themselves were destroyed, left an archival ghost records of their existence in institutional catalogues. The work orders are available with proper authorization. The room itself exists. It is still sealed, still located 8 feet beneath the basement of San Francisco City Hall, still containing whatever symbols are carved into its north wall. In 1974, during a separate foundation project, workers actually reached that depth again. The sealed chamber was visible for approximately 16 hours before being closed again and covered by reinforced concrete. 3 workers who saw it were interviewed 40 years later by a researcher named David Chen, no relation to Joseph Chen. All 3 described the same detail. The north wall had symbols carved into it. All 3 reported being told to sign confidentiality agreements and not discuss what they had seen. Nobody has been allowed to study the sealed chamber directly since 1895. No archaeological examination has ever been conducted. No formal geological analysis has been performed since the initial mortar sampling in 1895. The room remains officially categorized as a geological formation in city records, despite every piece of contemporary documentation describing it as constructed architecture. The symbols on the north wall have never been publicly documented or analyzed, despite being observed by multiple independent witnesses across 128 years. The origin of the construction remains unknown. The age of the mortar suggests a date that predates accepted European presence in the region by as much as 300 years. The construction method suggests engineering knowledge that does not match any documented indigenous culture's archaeological record. When Robert Hartley died in 1989, his collection of research materials was donated to the San Francisco History Center. He had spent nearly 20 years investigating the basement. In the margin of his personal notes, written the year before his death, he recorded his final observation. It read, "The question is not who built it. The question is why no one wants to know." The sealed room is proof that someone was here before anyone admits. The symbols are proof of knowledge we cannot place. The institutional silence is proof that this fact was deemed dangerous to acknowledge. This is the most dangerous discovery in San Francisco history, not because of what it proves about the past, because of what it forces us to question about authority. The sealed chamber remains beneath City Hall. The symbols remain unanalyzed. The question of who built a stone room with volcanic ash mortar, carved with symbols no one recognizes, built 8 feet deep in an area supposedly first settled in 1769, remains unanswered. The city continues its routine operations above it. Maintenance workers occasionally note references to the lower level that is off limits. No one asks why anymore. The silence is now simply accepted. The room is still there, measured and documented and sealed and forgotten, waiting beneath the feet of millions of people who have no idea what their city government deliberately chose not to understand.